And we are interrupting your normal program to bring you this special report. I'm Val Lego.
And I'm Kirk Montgomery. The Kent County Prosecutor Chris Becker is announcing a decision on whether or not to charge the Grand Rapids police officer who shot and killed Patrick Lyoya back on April 4th. Let's listen in.
For peace and calm during this entire time, I think has been tremendously beneficial for this community, and I can't say how much I appreciate what they've done in regards to that. I just had the opportunity to speak with the family, express my condolences and tell them essentially what I'm just telling you here. I have prepared a letter in their native Swahili, because obviously this is difficult even under the best of circumstances, much less with a language barrier. So I had a letter translated into Swahili to provide to the family so they can be fully aware of what my announcement is here today. And I've conveyed that to them and their family. I also want to thank the Michigan State Police for their dedication and really doing a thorough investigation in this matter. Detective Sergeant Aaron Tubergen really did an excellent job. He's done everything I requested of him, even on some of the follow-up, and so it's made a difficult situation, obviously a little bit easier to have a partner that you can work with. Based on his investigation, based on everything he has provided to me, I've made the decision to charge Christopher Schurr with 1 count of second-degree murder. Second-degree murder is a felony offense. It is punishable by up to life in prison with the possibility of parole. As it stands now, this is merely an allegation, and as with any defendant, he is presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. The elements of second-degree murder are relatively simple. First, there was a death done by the defendant. And then when the killing occurred, the defendant had one of these 3 states of mind: an intent to kill, an intent to do great bodily harm, or the intent to do an act that the natural tendency of that act would be to cause death or great bodily harm. And finally, that the death was not justified or excused, for example, by self-defense. Taking a look at everything that I reviewed in this case, I believe there's a sufficient basis to proceed on a single count of second-degree murder, and that charge has been filed with the courts as of today. Given that I filed charges, and we have all of you here today, the Michigan Rules of Professional Conduct severely limit what I can say. I'm not going to be able to get into the facts, the circumstances, the decisions I made through this process. The rules of professional conduct are pretty strict. This case needs to be tried in a court of law and not necessarily in public. So I will answer some questions. I can try and answer them, but I may not be able to, given the rules that I have to face. This case will be tried in the court. One other thing, for the local media who's here, I think they cover us quite a bit. They will notice that we did not file a felony firearm charge. Felony firearm is a separate charge. It's a 2-year that is added on to whatever underlying felony is, and we very often charge it when a gun is used in a homicide. We cannot do so in this circumstance. In 1991, the Michigan Supreme Court in People v. Khoury, Khoury, ruled that a felony firearm cannot be charged against a police officer who used a gun in the performance of their duties. So that is why you do not see a felony firearm charge, as is often the case under these circumstances. It is my understanding, I've been in contact with the Michigan State Police, that Mr. Schurr has turned himself in. He has been being processed. He will be arraigned in the 61st District Court in the city of Grand Rapids. It is my understanding that arraignment will take place sometime tomorrow. I do not have a specific time or date. That is up to the court. That is a function of the court, if you will, to take care of that. So that concludes my statement. As I said, I'll take some questions. I'll answer the questions that I can. I may not be able to answer all, and I'm just doing the questions here. I'm not going to do any individual interviews after this is all completed. So.
Did he talk to MSP? Did he sit down and do an interview with MSP?
I can't get into that. That would be a factual question in terms of that'll come out in court.
Mr. Becker, this incident happened on April 4th, so why did it take so long to come out with this charging decision today?
Hey, this is I just got the full report on the Tuesday after Memorial Day. So in terms of getting a complete report, I've only been, what is this, 8 days, 9 days after that. I mean, part of it was and it's not the Michigan State Police fault, it's getting the TASER report, the forensic report from the company. And, you know, things take time, and I want to be obviously thorough. This is obviously a major decision. We've never had to use a room like this for a case here, so it's just wanting to be thorough and go over everything. But I never got that, you know, the full report until about 8 days ago, so I don't think this is outside the bounds of what we normally do. We have cases that sometimes takes months to charge. I have a case going on right now that took almost 6-7 months to charge. You know, we make a decision when we have all the facts.
Mr. Prosecutor, you had said you wanted to talk with some experts
Mm-hmm.
in your deliberation in this case. Can you give us a hint of who you talked to? Were they use of force experts? Can you tell us who you used as sounding boards?
There were use of force experts. I'm not going to get into my witnesses in terms of the case, but that I know that came up in one of the questions in terms of the Michigan State Police. I did request the Michigan State Police, ask them if they could maybe, you know, give their expertise, but there's an issue in terms of they are kind of the fact finders, and then trying to ask them to be opinions on top of the fact finders. We were a little bit uncomfortable with that, so that's part of the reason I went kind of outside, because that's been one of the things I've heard is why not use the Michigan State Police. So we tried to use them, so we went outside of that, and you'll find out about them as this case progresses.
Chris, 2 questions. One, do you think that this case should be prosecuted in Kent County, given, you know, how much attention it's gotten? And 2, will your office be requesting that he not be given bond, or are you fine with having him released?
Yeah, I don't see why it wouldn't be tried in Kent County. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't know where else is it going to be tried. I mean, this is not like, you know, only Kent County media is here today. So we've handled high-profile cases, very high-profile cases. I think I'm very confident with Kent County juries to look at the facts and kind of block this out. I've handled high-profile cases, so I'm not concerned about that. In terms of the bond issue, we don't get involved in bonds in our office. I don't know how it's done in other cases or other counties, but we're not at arraignments. I don't have the bodies to cover out arraignments, so that we have a court services that comes up with a report. I can go into that, a praxis, if you will, and they come up with a, you know, prior history, mental health history, what the crime was, and they provide that to the judge. The judge makes the decision on bond. So that'll be essentially a court function, and we generally stay out of it. I can't say every single time, but generally stay out of it in the vast, 99% of the cases. I think there's let's give him next to you. He had.
For manslaughter charges, and talk about the difference between manslaughter and second degree in this case.
Obviously, we considered, we looked at everything. And so manslaughter will be a lesser included offense. The difference in manslaughter is a heat of passion. There's some sort of provocation with heat of passion. So that is something we took a look at. I felt based on the evidence I reviewed, I think a second degree murder charge is appropriate. But that is generally a lesser included instruction should it get to a jury.
Was Grand Rapids Police Chief Winstrom informed of your decision before you just announced it?
Yes, I talked to them, yes. I let them know yesterday.
Can you share anything with that conversation?
I will let him, I'm not going to speak for him, or I'll let him answer that. I'm sure they'll probably have something to say.
Mr. Prosecutor, given the second degree murder charge, does this make it more difficult for you to prove this in court? And do you have any concerns with the jury? We're from Detroit. We came to town to cover
Sure.
the plot to kidnap the governor, and 2 men were found not guilty by that jury. So what are your thoughts about a jury, and does this charge make it a higher bar for you to win in court?
No, I don't think so. I think, obviously, I wouldn't charge if I didn't think I could prove it. I don't, be it manslaughter or second degree murder, it's almost the same, it's the same elements, to be honest with you, except that manslaughter has the negating factor, if you look at the law, that it was done under the heat of passion. So the jury will have the opportunity to consider that. So I don't think it's a higher burden. The Whitmer jury, and I'm not a federal, so I can't comment a whole lot. I wasn't involved in that, but I have faith in Kent County juries. I mean, I think they're very conscientious. They listen, they pay attention, and they're not swayed by outside influences. I think they're very considerate. So I guess they will take the seriousness and take the time to do what they think is, right in a situation like this. I really do believe that. In the back.
Sir, did you hear from when you presented to the family, get feedback from them that they expressed themselves?
Very briefly, I mean, they said thank you, and it was a very brief phone call, so I did not, really talk to them a whole lot, with the interpreter. It's difficult. I mean, it's difficult. I also wanted them, they didn't have an opportunity to read my letter. I said, why don't you, read the letter, and, we're going to talk later since we did charge, so we'll have an opportunity to speak as this goes through. I think
Did this send a message to police officers
I don't think so. I'm never big.
Okay, we've been listening to Prosecutor Chris Becker announcing Grand Rapids Police Officer Christopher Schurr is being charged with second-degree murder in the death of Patrick Lyoya.
Yes, we are told that he turned himself in to police today and is expected to face a judge tomorrow. We are going to go now live to Detroit to the Lyoya attorney, Ben Johnson.
With the knowledge that death or great bodily harm was the probable result,
na kuangalia kama kifo na mtu walilumiza ilikuwa resulta ya vitu ilipitikana.
there is no excuse for the killing.
Hakukuwa hata kitu moja kusema kusikize juu alimuua,
Like, for example,
kwa sababu kama example
self-defense,
kulikuwa kitu kama ilikuwa self defense, kujiproteger,
which is obviously what Officer Schur's criminal defense team will argue.
na njoo yenye kitu tasikia batu ya avoka yake ya Schurr batenda banasema banapiganisha se kama alikuwa anajidefend.
As a civil lawyer, it's not for me to comment on what are probable or likely jail sentences, because as you all know, that's a huge if there's a conviction.
Na unajua kama mie niko avoka wa droit civile, na siwezi kusema kama ndena kumusema bamufunge kwa sababu mnajua kama kuko possibility kama batamusharge.
So in your questions today, when you want to know, which is a logical question, I guess, what is the possible sentence? Answer is, I don't know, and it's a long way to go, y'all, so we're not going to be commenting on that today.
Na unajua kama kwa maswali yenu unatafuta kuniuliza kama yeye batana kumfunga, yeye batana kumpatia pinisho gani, mimi sijue, lakini mimi najua kama itakuwa njia mrefu sana.
What we do think today shows
Kitu yenye tunafikiri leo inaonesha
is something that Ben Crump and I,
ni kitu yenye kama mie na Ben Crump
on the behalf of the family,
na kupitia kwa jamaa ya Patrick Lyoya
have not just been saying,
hatukuwa tu tunasema,
but have been publicly showing you and proving to you the evidence
na tuko tunabaonesha maevidence yote yenye pale,
that there is no excuse whatsoever
na kukuwa hata kitu moja ya kujisikize pale popote
for Patrick being shot in the back of the head.
Patrick kupigwa masasi nyuma ya kichwa.
Unfortunately, many people in our society believe,
Na malheureusement watu mingi mu societe yetu banakuwa banakroire,
contrary to Michigan and United States law,
contrairement na ku Michigan na ku Etats-Unis, sheria Etats-Unis,
that if you resist arrest,
kama una resiste polisi kwa kufunga,
the officer can do anything he wants to you, up to and including kill you.
na polisi atena kufanya yote yenye anataka, askari atena kufanya yote anataka na mpaka kuua.
That's blatantly false,
Na ile kitu iko mbaya,
and case law absolutely makes it clear that cannot be done.
na tuko tunasema kama tunazungumza kama hii kitu haiwezi kufanyikana hata kidogo.
It apparently is so clear
Na nakuya kwa kuonesha
to the Kent County Prosecutor,
kutokea ku Kent County Procureur,
who certainly has never charged another officer, even though there have been a number of shootings with this crime before,
na haya hata siku moja kwa kata na charge officier moya na kusha kwa mabitu bifu mingi bipitikana mupase,
how clear he believes this evidence to be.
na kuona kama hii evidence ilikuwa vraiment claire,
Obviously, Mr. Becker in his office
na kusema kweli kama Becker na biro yake
will have the full cooperation
patakuwa na cooperation yote mzuri
of both Ben Crump and my law firms
na Ben Crump na mimi hapa na watu wangu ninatumika nao
and the entire Loyola family.
na kutokea na jamaa yote ya Lyoya.
Last thing I want to say myself
Na kitu ya
before
mwisho mimi natafuta kusema mbele ni wapatie neno,
I introduce who's here and then ask Mr. Crump to say a few words. Hopefully he's available.
na nikuambia ni bwana Crump aseme Kenya atasema kama atakuwa disponible
Any and all people
kwa watu wote
in Grand Rapids
mu Grand Rapids
or anywhere else across the country
na
or this
kufikia
world.
wote mu Etats-Unis,
There should be no violence whatsoever
na
today
tupendi hata violence leo na kusikua hata vitu yenye vitavunjika leo
or in any other day
na neema siku yote yenye nakuya
in the name of Patrick Lyoya.
kwa jina ya Patrick Lyoya.
This family
Hii jamaa
has been absolutely devastated by the death of their son and brother,
ilivunjika moyo sana kwa kupitia kifo ya ndugu yao na mtoto wao,
and the last thing they want
na kitu ya mwisho banataka tena
is anyone else to get hurt.
na mtu wote mwingine aumie.
They've done the right thing.
walifanya kitu mzuri,
They've come forward.
walikuja mbele,
They've cooperated with the authorities.
walizungumza na autorite,
They retained lawyers
walikamata avoka
to abide by the legal system.
na kuikala kufuata sisteme legale yenye iko ya nchi.
And that's what they're asking everybody. Let calm be the word of the day.
Na njo yenye biko banaambia batu bote neno ya leo,
And please honor Patrick.
sema se kama umuonore Patrick, mumwishi Patrick.
If you choose to demonstrate, protest, or what have you,
Kama unatafuta kudemontre protest yenye unatafuta kufanya,
please do so peacefully.
uifanye kwa kimya,
And we want no one else to be injured or killed.
na tupendi mtu wowote alumie wala kufe.
To my right, everyone knows,
Kwa mkono wangu wa mume mnyi wote mnajua
is Peter Lyoya, who is Patrick's dad.
Peter Lyoya mwenye ko babake na Patrick.
Next to Peter is Israel Saku,
Pembeni yake kuko
SIKU.
Israel Siku SIKU,
He's been our on-demand interpreter,
na interpret wetu
a confidant, pastor, best friend to Peter and the family.
ko mchungaji na mtu mwenye banazungumza sana na Patrick, familia Patrick.
Next to Israel, we're blessed to have Grand Rapids Commissioner
Na pembeni yangu tuko na commissaire
Robert Womack,
Robert Womack,
who has been supportive and 100% transparent with this family from day one.
na mwenye iko na supporte familia na kukua kuonesha uwazi tangia siku ya kwanza.
And he is here at our invitation, and we're eternally grateful for that.
Na tuko hapa na invitation yetu na tunasema asante sana.
To the right of Mr. Womack
Kwenda kwa mkono ya ingine ya mwanaume ya baba Womack
is attorney Darren Findling,
ni avocat Darren Findling.
Findling. Darren is with the law firm Probate Pro in Royal Oak,
Na anatumika Grand Rapide na Probe.
and the family has retained Mr. Findling as his firm to open up the probate estate,
Na jamaa Lyoya ilimwangaje kusema banamkamata kama mtu mwenye atangalia vitu ya probation ya
Which is-
Probe mu Grand Rapide.
which is pretty standard procedure,
Na ni
But-
kusema standard moja mzuri sana.
has to happen in order for there to be an initiation of any probate or civil proceedings,
Na inapasha kufika kuona kama hii njo inapasha kufikia.
such as those that Mr. Crump and I will be discussing and contemplating.
Na njo vitu yenye mie na Mr. Crump tutakuwa tunazungumza kwa masiku kucha.
Do we have Ben on? 2 more minutes? Okay, well, here comes the soft shoe.
Here he is.
I don't dance well anyway, so thank you. Mark, please don't dance, Ben. Don't dance. Sorry for the Zoom problems today, guys. I apologize. Okay. Before you guys leave, if you want, I have made a copy of the second-degree murder criminal charges.
Mbele mwende nilikamata, niko na karatasi yale masharge yote yenye walifanya contre officier,
There are some what we call lesser included offenses there as well.
na kuko vingine masharge yenye tulikuwa tunasema ya kidogo.
And these are the instructions that the prosecutor will be, or I should say the judge in the criminal case would be giving the jury.
Na hii njo yenye tutakuwa tunababata, jiji atapatia bajiri.
Mr. Crump is in California and I'm trying to break it. Hey Cliff, how we doing?
I'm great, sir. I'm getting on right now. How you doing?
I'm well, sir. Thank you very much. Appreciate
Yes,
you,
sir.
Cliff.
We got everybody?
We got everybody.
I have more. Give me 60 seconds.
Yes, sir. So if anybody wants a copy of that, Alex Urban from Near Perfect Media has that for you in the written
Na
form.
kila mtu wote mwenye anataka ile kopi, kuko mtu mwenye kupala atapatia hayo.
If you'd prefer it to be emailed to you, let us know, and Danielle Asplin, my
Na
executive
kama anataka
assistant,
tuwatumie kwa email tutawatumia hayo.
or Alex will handle it.
Na Alex atafanya kazi.
Thank you for your patience.
Asante kwa uvumilivu yenu.
Danielle, we need to get a license in this room apparently. Look at us. Unlicensed room.
And you've been listening live to Ben Johnson, the attorney for the Lyoya family. He is in he is in downtown Detroit, and that is also where our Justin Bachman is, and he will be bringing us more details on that as we go forward here. But what we did hear him say was that the family says that this sort of justifies what they've been saying all along, that there's no excuse, and this is what the charges say, no excuse for Patrick's death.
And he also called for no violence. He said you can protest peacefully, but that the family doesn't want to see anybody else get hurt today. We also heard from the translator, Israel Saku, the translator for the family, speaking in their native Swahili language as well.
Yes, and the family is making sure that everyone is safe during this time, which is, of course, what we all want. We're starting to feel a little bit of closure to all of this as we move forward and we hear those charges. And, of course, it took 2 months to make a decision because the Kent County Prosecutor wanted to make sure that he had all of the guidance that he needed to make sure that he made the right decision. This was a very, very big decision for him. You know, we did take a look back at 10 previous officer-involved shootings that Becker investigated over the last few years, and we found that it did take him on average about 45 days to make this decision. In the press conference today, he said he honestly did not get the entire
report
case
from the tasers
until the 31st of May, which really wasn't that long ago. So he said he wanted to make sure he had all of that. So he felt that he had not taken as long as everyone had thought. Of course, this is 67 days since he was able to make a decision in that case.
Now I think we want to bring in a legal expert to weigh in on this decision. Attorney Anastas Marcu of Levine & Levine has specialized in criminal defense for over 20 years now.
Yes, a long history of defending people charged with serious criminal offenses in state and federal trials. And want to ask you first, what are your thoughts on the charges?
Well, I'm not surprised that there was a second-degree murder charge. Reviewing the video itself and seeing what happened that's at least depicted on the video, there is at least some evidence or sufficient evidence for a prosecutor to charge a second-degree murder charge, even if it was a police officer and a person on the street. The question then becomes from this point forward, what are going to be the available defenses for the person who's been charged and how the case is going to proceed after that.
What do you think some of those defenses could possibly be?
One of the things that can be done is that request or to defend on a lesser included offense. I think the civil lawyers have attempted to submit jury instructions to the various members of the press, but I'll kind of give you a short summary that he's charged with second-degree murder, and that requires very specific types of mental states. Nobody questions that when you put a gun up to someone's head and pull a trigger that somebody is intending to shoot somebody. But for instance, there's a lesser included offense of second-degree murder called voluntary manslaughter, where if the person is in the heat of passion or has been under an extreme emotional state and they react within that state, if the jury finds something like that, then that would be a voluntary manslaughter, which is a lesser offense. Given the intensity of the situation, I expect that is going to be one of the defenses raised, that this was not a second-degree murder case, that it's more of a voluntary manslaughter case.
Well, you mentioned the intense interest in this case. Do you think there'll be any chance of this trial maybe being moved out of this area because of the intense interest?
I think probably not. I think that it's very difficult to get venue changed in a criminal case. Typically, that doesn't happen unless there's clear evidence, either immediately before trial or during trial, that you just can't sit an impartial jury. There are usually enough people in a large county like Kent County that either don't know enough or don't have any strong feelings about the case where you can get a fair and impartial jury.
And of course, Becker also mentioned the fact that there's no felony firearm charge that's going to go along with this. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm not sure I agree with his legal analysis on that. I will say that from the defense point of view, I understand the decision that he made, and that there is some authority that if somebody's acting within their authority as a police officer, the state of Michigan has found that in fact you cannot charge felony firearm. The real question in this case is going to be whether he was actually acting within his lawful law enforcement authority. So it really is debatable whether or not a felony firearm charge could have been issued.
All right, Attorney Marco, we are going to put you on hold for a moment as we head back to Detroit, where Ven Johnson's law offices are continuing to hold their press conference.
One of, sadly, hundreds of cases. Has an officer ever been charged before in one of my cases? So that's the level of my cynicism. And I commend Mr. Becker for getting beyond that. To me, this was so crystal clear that these charges absolutely had to be. The Michigan State Police doing an investigation clearly led to these charges, which tells you, although they don't make charging decisions, they felt this was what's called, sorry folks, a bad shoot. Translation, not justified under the law. Yes, even with resisting arrest. Yes, even with the potentiality for alcohol. Yes, even if there were other criminal issues going on. It's so crystal clear the prosecutor filed charges of second-degree murder because, as we've been saying from day one, none of that stuff matters as it pertains to this interaction on that day. I hope I answered your question.
Mr. Johnson, but does Mr. Lyoya want to make a statement? Does he want to say anything?
Not right now. He's going to answer questions, please. Go for it.
Ben, can you share, since Mr. Becker called you before you came out here, and it was a private moment,
Yes.
can you share with us both your reaction and Patrick's dad's reaction to that call and that decision?
To be fair, and to be accurate, Mr. Becker actually called Peter. But I, of course, identified that I was in the room so that he knew. In our legal world, that is a professional courtesy, and I would want the same. So when Peter answered the phone, he put it on speaker. I introduced myself. He was already aware of Israel Sukkot, but I explained to him that he is our interpreter and that we were all ears. It was very brief. It was very to the point, even shorter than what he did in the press conference. And he expressed his condolences, apologized for what had to feel to the family like taking too long. Explained why it took that long. And just like any good, responsible prosecutor, promised that there would be follow-up. In terms of cooperation between the family and the prosecutor's office. Peter, would you like to comment on what that felt like to you when you heard those words?
Ninaweza nikaambia watu kwanza ninaanza na kusema asante kwa prosecutor.
First, I want to say thank you to this prosecutor. That's what I want to tell the people.
Nasema asante kwa Ben Crump lawyer.
I want to say thank you to Ben Crump, the attorney Ben Crump.
Nasema asante kwa Ven Johnson.
I want to say thank you also to attorney Ven Johnson.
Kwa hii point tunafikia iko
where we have come today.
Kweli roho yangu ilikuwa imevunjika kwa hii miezi miwili.
My heart was really broken during these 2 months, the past 2 months.
Basi maneno yalikuwa yanasemewa
because a lot of things were said,
lakini uhakika sikukuwa nao.
I was not quite sure with the truth in my hand.
Basi na nilikuwa naona kabisa labda hakuna sheria Marekani.
And I was thinking maybe there's no justice in America.
Lakini kwa kufuatana na jinsi procureur anasema,
and to go according to what the prosecutor just said,
kwa kumchaji huyu polisi ambaye amemuua Patrick,
to charge the police officer who killed Patrick.
Kweli Patrick hatarudia.
Patrick is not coming back.
Hatutamuonaka.
We are not going to see him again.
Lakini hii pointi ya kuonesha kama huyu polisi atakuwa charge,
and to show this point that the police officer will be charged
basi
and is
inakuwa
charged.
na sawa, inaletea na si uzito kidogo kwa familia kuona kama wale ambao wametusupport wamefanya wako katika kazi ya mzuri.
And that brings a little bit consolation to our family, because we see everybody that will support us, everybody who stand by us, they did a good job to get this kind of justice.
Lakini nitawashukuru sana nyie wote.
And I want to say thank you to all of you, the media.
Hatutaishia hapa.
We are not done here.
Lakini tuendeleshe kutafuta tu mpaka tupate justice ya mwisho.
Let's go till to the end and let's get the last justice for Patrick.
Basi namalizia pale na washukuru sana.
I want to just stop there and want to say thank you so much.
Sir.
Then Israel, for Commissioner Womack, you guys have been on this for a long time and seen that video over and over again. It's difficult for kids to watch. Do you think you would have gotten those charges without it?
Since it only shows the truth, I would certainly hope so. But let's be real. In a word, no way. Or is that 2 words?
Israel, I mean, you, for the first demonstrations, you had members of the community on the ground recreating.
Anasema demonstration ya kwanza tulifanyaka, tulicreate, tukatia moto chini. Anasema important. Anasema unafikiri tungifika hapa kama tungifanya ile demonstration? You want me to answer or you want him to answer?
Peter, if you're comfortable.
Unatafuta kujibia. Kama hakungekuwa video, unasema tungipata justice leo.
Mimi najua hatungeona ile video na kuonesha jinsi Patrick ameuawa, najua hatungefika kwa hiyo hatua ya leo.
Okay, I want to say, and I know, if we didn't see the video and if we didn't show the world what happened to Patrick, we were not going to be here where we are. And also myself, I was going to say that thank you to you media, special to Miss Edward and Jacqueline. They were the first person to contact, and I had an interview with them and tell them exactly what happened in the video. It's because of the video and what we did and the attorney and by Mr. Crump that what we have got a little bit justice. What we have heard today, without that video, there will be no justice at all.
Robert?
And I'd like to say, once I heard from a few people on the scenes that he had been shot from behind, that's when I began to write a chant and talk about, show the video, we want the world to know. And that just became one of the refrains while we were in Grand Rapids. And it really just shows that without video, without body cam, how many black lives have been lost in the past that did not find justice. I'm so happy to see the justice system working, because my main reason to be involved is to show young people that there are alternatives to burning down buildings. There's alternatives to throwing bricks. We don't want any violence. But I understand how the youth feel. I understand how young people feel. I understand the frustration. As Attorney Johnson said, he's only seen one more time in Michigan of cases he had where police was charged. And now we're up to 2. So young people have saw the justice system work in the favor of police officers, whether innocent or guilty. Quantified immunity is something that they're familiar with, and they're frustrated. But days like this prove that we can believe in a process. We can believe in it. But the process, if we did not ask for a thorough investigation, we have proof that there's been video that's been deleted before and lost at the Grand Rapids Police Department.
Let me chime in twice on that. Lauren, I know you're going to ask me this. I'm clairvoyant on this issue.
Yeah.
All I have is what you all have. I still don't have the Michigan State Police, which, talk about first time in 36 years. I've always get the police report on behalf of the family before now. They withheld it till today, so I cannot wait, and yes, I will share it. You all know I will. Because it's a FOIA document, Freedom of Information Act request, and I put that in air quotes. The evidence is, we all know, that the body cam was turned off. The only way this body cam turns off, is to hold the button down for 3 continuous seconds. Hello? This was not an accidental turnoff. More later. Video. Critical, not just to prosecute a police officer, but the statistics show, y'all, that it actually inures to the officer's benefit the overwhelming majority of the time. But what is happening in our police agencies is there is a non-compliance rate that is so high that they never turn them on, they turn them off. I would argue, without a whole lot of proof, they erase it easily. In half the cases that I deal with body cams, on-dash cams, it wasn't working that day. It didn't record the right way. Fact of the matter is, we as a society, you folks are doing what you do, and again, thank you, great work. We need to hold our police agencies, our cities, responsible for using this equipment every single day, every single time. No matter what happens, let the chips fall where they may. That's what I call transparency, not using that word while I'm telling you why I'm hiding something from you.
And that was my question. The point of contention from day one was that body cam and how it was knocked off or turned off. And so I was going to ask, are you still going to look into that?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
And what could come from that? If you find discrepancies, what could come from that?
One of the missing pieces of evidence when the MSP report was given to Mr. Becker, as he claimed, was the download from the on-dash camera on top of the dash of the car, and body camera, and the taser, which likewise has video capabilities. Typically, we'll find out all together. So what you're going to find is that this body camera never was turned off accidentally ever before in history, except on April 4, 2022. So that would certainly damage Officer Schurr's what will clearly be his version of what happened that day on a variety of topics. So we'll see. Yes, you know, Laura and I am going to
If I could say
crazy
something quick, I would say, with all the money we pay as taxpayers for body cams, only civilians caught the footage of Patrick Lyoya actually being shot. Not the dash cam of the Grand Police Department officer's car, not the body cam. Only the ring of a neighbor and the passenger who thought fast got out the car and filmed was the actual shooting caught.
On that point, Robert, we often see online, right, videos now of everything, and people that are filming are often harassed by police and people online. And again, my question to you all, right back, where would we be without it? So, great question. Yes, sir.
2 points for clarity, please. When did the phone call come specifically?
You mean for Mr. Becker?
Yes. How long before this news briefing?
Approximately, it was 3 o'clock press conference, 2:55-ish. We were literally, I'd gotten out of my chair and we were walking to this room.
And secondly, I have not heard, maybe I'm not paying
close enough attention, but the reason why it took 2 months, you said he explained. Can you paraphrase what you were told?
Yes, Mr. Becker said that he felt the need to wait for the downloads of the on-body camera, in other words, from other days, and the download from the taser from other days. They already had what they had on the day of. That's what he said. He apparently also did not go into detail, but publicly, I've read, that he said that he wanted to contact experts. And you all will remember in George Floyd, one of the first things that we all saw on TV, and number one thing I want to say to you all, please insist on being in that courtroom every single day in Kent County, Michigan, for every part of this trial, for every hearing, for every trial, so that the public obviously can see this process, which I think only makes us stronger. Lost it. Where was I going? What was the second part? What the heck was I saying?
The second part was why it waited 2 months.
Oh, he said that he wanted to talk to experts. And in George Floyd, what was one of the most critical parts is you saw chiefs of police from not just Minneapolis, but from other places across the country coming in to say, no, what this officer did was not what he was trained, was wrong. You're going to see the same thing in this case you watch, in criminal and in civil.
I want to see Christopher Schurr fired immediately. And I'm sure our community would want the same thing.
Do you know if the Department of Justice may still get involved in terms of filing civil rights complaint or filing charges on those ends, or no? Is that
Help me to I didn't hear your first part. I'm sorry.
The Department of Justice,
Yes.
Reverend Sharpton had asked for the DOJ to get involved.
Yes.
Is that something you would still ask for, and could they also possibly get it, or no, do they
Well,
have to wait for this to play out?
Lucky for me, I don't have to wait for it because Ben Crump's already done it. But there's no question, just like with Officer Chauvin in the George Floyd murder, you can have two different tracks, one state, one's federal. So without any question, we will be formally asking the Department of Justice to be reviewing this thing. And to refresh your memories, after Chauvin was convicted of the same crime that Officer Schurr, y'all, was charged with today, second-degree murder, if that was lost on anybody, same crime, a little bit different words sometimes because it's Minnesota versus Michigan, same crime. Once he was convicted of that.
And we have been listening to attorney Ven Johnson, an attorney for Patrick Lyoya's family, with the news today. If you're just joining us, breaking news: after 66 days, the Kent County Prosecutor Chris Becker has decided to charge Grand Rapids police officer Christopher Schurr with second-degree murder in the shooting death of Patrick Lyoya.
We want to bring in our legal expert once again, that is attorney Anastasia Marcoux with Levine & Levine, specializing in criminal defense for over 20 years. We heard a lot about Ven Johnson talking about the video and the importance of the video, and that 3 seconds where it got turned off. What are your thoughts on how that will play a role going forward in this trial?
One of the key aspects is going to be the intent element, whether or not this person intended to kill, and to the extent there's proof, circumstantial or otherwise, that the officer did what he could to prevent recording of what he was going to do, that could go a long way in prosecuting this case. The defense side of it is that there's going to be a difficulty in the prosecutor's case to prove that any stoppage of the video was intentional. That's really where one of the fights is going to be regarding the video itself.
And of course, we know that it took a very long time to get all of that evidence together in regards to that video. Do you think that there's any possibility that they can prove that there was intent, or do you just feel like this is going to be an argument that goes back and forth without much resolve?
I think there's going to be arguments back and forth. I expect that because that's what defense lawyers do. They try to find ways to show whether or not the investigation has been fair, whether or not the investigation has been thorough, whether or not they're fairly prosecuting based on real evidence. What I expect that the prosecuting attorney has done, and the way it sounds like what they did, is they did a download of past recordings from that exact same body camera device to determine whether or not this is a regular practice of the officer to turn off his body camera or not, or whether or not it's been functioning the way it's supposed to have functioned in the last 10 to 15 days. If there's glitches in the body camera that have been evident for the last 10 days, that could aid the defense. So I'm guessing that's part of what the prosecuting attorney was doing, was to shore up to the best they could how solid the evidence was from the prosecutor's point of view that this was an intentional and deliberate effort to stop the body camera from recording.
Attorney Marco, we appreciate it greatly, of course, that explanation as to why it did take so long and why he wanted the downloads. It helps gives us more perspective on the videos at hand that are going to be discussed, I'm sure, at length during the trial. We are going to put you on pause for a moment and head back now to Detroit and Ben Johnson with his press conference.
Of steps that should go a lot farther than that was. But we were greatly appreciative. My client, through Israel, Mr. Saku, had a very nice one-on-one conversation with President Biden right here and Vice President Harris right there. And it was very emotional, to say the least. From a lawyer, now I'll give you the real answer. President, when we were with the President, what did you think and feel?
Can I state what
and the Vice
Peter,
President?
Can I state what Peter told the President?
Yes.
When he shook the President's hand, he looked the President in the eyes and he said, I need justice for my son. I came to America as a refugee. I ran away from war. I thought maybe I would be safe with my family here. But my son has been killed. I just need justice. And there's a very interesting that the President did. He said, I know. When he told him, he said, I am Patrick Lyoya, father. The President said, I know. That to show you the kind of man that he is. He's paying attention to his people. And that was a little bit consolation for Peter. And when he told him that I need justice for my son, the President looked at him and said, I know.
It should not be lost on anyone in this room. There was only one family there who hadn't already been through a criminal and or civil process. Loyola's, and we were still in that room. So clearly, to the President and Vice President of the United States, even though criminal charges were not pending at the time, they knew how bad this was. And we acknowledge that and we thank them for what they did that day. Commissioner? Please.
When you talk about thinking about civil proceedings,
yes.
Do you wait until formal remand on criminal, or does there have to be a conviction? Timing in regards to filing?
Okay. There is no law that prohibits me or us from filing a civil case at any time. So we could have done it already had we chosen to. But obviously I work with Ben Crump, and we're working as a team. What we'll do now is we'll have a chance to review. We've already drafted a lawsuit called a complaint. Drafted simply means it's in its phases. It's right here. And we're reviewing it to make it as, pristine as possible. We'll make our recommendations to the family about timing. And they're the bosses. And if Peter says yes, then we file. If Peter says no, then we don't. But there is nothing that would prohibit us from filing at this point or any point before now. So the question is, will we likely be filing the civil case? And the answer is yes, we will.
Yes, porter plainte.
There's still a long road ahead before we know if there's going to be any convictions for Mr. Lyoya. How does he feel about the days to come?
Anasema masiku za mrefu zikingaliki na kujua kama petetre huyu mtu watamfunga kama watamfunga. Unasikia yuko unajisikia juu ya masiku yenye kunakia mbele. Selon wewe unaona
selon mimi najua kama kufuatana na labda sheria hapa Marekani itakamata muda.
According to me, the way I know that with the law here in the United States it may take long.
Basi mimi nilishapoteza kwanza.
I have lost
na nilisha kuvumilia.
I have really patient.
Nitachunga tu.
What I will wait.
Nasubiria tu ile sheria.
I just wait for justice.
Biwe birefu, biwe bifupi, lakini mimi nachunga tu ni sheria.
It can be long, it can be short, but what I want just is the final justice for my son.
Charges are one thing, you all know that. Convictions, a whole nother thing. So again, it's a long road, and family will know that, and we will be right there with them the whole way.
Charge iko na conviction iko different, itakuwa njia mrefu na nyie wote mnajua vile.
Anybody else before we go? Really appreciate everybody being here. Thank you. Sorry for the Zoomology and the cramped quarters. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Take that and I'll give it right back to you.
10 minutes.
Sorry?
10 minutes.
Yes, sir. I'll be in my office. Thank you, Alex.
And you have been listening to a press conference by Ben Johnson, who is the attorney for the Lyoyas. Peter Lyoya, the father, was there as well, talking extensively about how much they are in line with the charges that have been filed. This is what they had asked for. This is what they had wanted.
We also heard from Kent County Commissioner Robert Womack, who was also there, saying that we can believe in the process again after the announcement today that Grand Rapids police officer Christopher Schurr will be charged with second-degree murder in the death of Patrick Lyoya. Also, it's worth pointing out that this morning at the commissioners' meeting, they had an invocation where the Israel Saku, who we've also been listening to, he's the translator for the family, speaking in their native Swahili, and a pastor, a family pastor as well, praying for peace in Grand Rapids today.
And it's something that the family wants moving forward, for this to be peaceful as they go through the entire court case. We want to bring back in our legal expert, attorney Anastasia Marcoux with Levine and Levine, who has specialized in criminal defense over the last 20 years. In listening to what Ben Johnson has had to say over the course of the last several minutes, what is it that you feel is one of the most important things that he has said going forward in what you think the defense might, and what you think he might go for?
So I believe that what Ben Johnson said about the process taking some time, and there is no guarantee of what's going to happen during the process, I think that's fair and reasonable. When you have a case like this that involves a law enforcement officer who has certain duties and certain authorities, and there's questions about video evidence, what's accurate, what's not, whether or not the officer turned it off intentionally or not, things like that. The process does take time, and it takes time before you get to even a trial in a case like this. So I think I echo those sentiments from the civil attorney that, in fact, this is going to take some time. The other part that he stressed was a charge is not a conviction. And the reality is that this person has been charged. And in our system of justice, regardless of what the video shows, he's presumed innocent. And he's presumed innocent throughout an entire trial until the prosecutor proves him guilty of whatever charges they've lodged beyond a reasonable doubt. And I expect that the defense is going to assert some common law defenses regarding the rights of police officers to use reasonable force to arrest somebody. There's going to be all these different types of legal issues fought before and during trial, and I expect it will be a long process.
And do you anticipate that Officer Schurr will be released on a bond to wait for this trial to happen?
That's I would say that the judge has the authority to set an extremely high bond given the nature of the offense, and even a denied bond on a life offense like this if the court chooses to do so. In general, however, other than a case like first-degree murder, courts are supposed to go through a variety of factors, including whether or not the person is a risk of fleeing. Well, we know he hasn't fled in the last 2 months, and whether or not the person's going to pose a danger to the community while out on bond. He doesn't have, as far as we know, any other criminal history, any other criminal violations. So when you consider all of that, and you weigh that against the fact that he's charged with probably the second most serious crime you can be charged with in the state of Michigan, it's going to be a difficult decision for a judge, but I will expect that the judge will set a bond, and it'll be an amount that the officer may be able to post.
Now, we also heard Ben Johnson mention something about a civil case as well. Those can't happen at the same time, can they?
They can. In fact, there are different burdens of proof, different types of evidence rules are in place, different types of rules about how to gather evidence before. So the civil attorney will have to make a strategic decision because it's really the deceased family that decides whether or not to file a lawsuit and when. And as obviously it's limited only by the statute of limitations, meaning they have to file it within a certain number of years after this. But sure, they can do it simultaneously. It becomes complicated. One of the issues will be they'll want to depose, meaning take an under oath statement from the person who's been charged if they file a civil case. And that person has a Fifth Amendment right not to incriminate themselves, even during a civil case. So it does become complicated when they're going on at the same time. I think most of the times, civil cases, they kind of wait it out a little bit to see what's happening in the criminal case before they initiate civil proceedings.
All right, Attorney Marco, we want to thank you so much for your expertise that you have lended to us this afternoon. You've given us some great perspective on things that have been mentioned in the press conferences.
All right. Now, we do want to mention that Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel has released a statement late this afternoon in response to the charging decision in the Patrick Lyoya case.
Nessel said, in part, I commend Prosecutor Becker, his team, and the Michigan State Police for the exhaustive review conducted these last 2 months. We must now respect the judicial process and allow the facts of the case to be presented in court.
So again, if you are just joining us, we are following breaking news. After 66 days, Kent County Prosecutor Chris Becker has decided to charge Grand Rapids Police Officer Christopher Schurr in the shooting death of Patrick Lyoya. He spoke just a few moments ago, so here's what he had to say.
I made the decision to charge Christopher Schurr with 1 count of second-degree murder. Second-degree murder is a felony offense. It is punishable by up to life in prison with the possibility of parole. As it stands now, this is merely an allegation, and as with any defendant, he is presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law.
Now, Prosecutor Becker said that this case took more than 2 months to make a decision because he determined he needed additional expert guidance beyond the help of Michigan State Police.
Of course, 13 on Your Side looked back at 10 previous officer-involved shootings investigated by Becker over the last few years, and we found it took the prosecutor's office an average of 45 days to make a decision. In the Patrick Lyoya case, today marks 67 days since Becker was able to make a decision on that case.
Now, also, the NAACP of Greater Grand Rapids Branch has been demanding for Kent County Prosecutor Chris Becker recuse himself from the investigation. We know, of course, that that has not happened.
Right, and we are anticipating that they will be having a press conference shortly, which we will join when that does happen.
We want to give you just some quick background, too. Officer Christopher Schurr, 31 years old. He grew up in Byron Center and went to Byron Center High School. He graduated from Siena Heights University in Adrian. He was a top record-setting pole vaulter in college. He went on a mission to Kenya through a church he was with, and that's where he met and married his fiancee there.
And we also did take a look back at some of his public records. That included incidents reports, dispatch forensic reports, but another document we received, of course, through a public records request, was his personnel file. And Officer Schurr received numerous letters of recognition for his meritorious and professional actions throughout his career since 2015, which was when he joined the force. He's been praised for his actions during various traffic stops that led to felony arrests and removing guns and drugs off the streets since 2016. He had only 2 complaints against him. He was found at fault at a traffic crash in January of 2021, and he was exonerated on another improper search and diligence complaint in April 2021. As we know, he did turn himself in today.
Right.
And we are expecting him to be arraigned sometime tomorrow, though we don't have those complete details.
And earlier we were listening to Ben Johnson, a lawyer for the Lyoya family, along with Patrick's father. Okay, it's my understanding now that we're going to go to the NAACP, who's holding a press conference in reaction to today's events.
A couple different devices here that I'm reading from, so we should be good. If I mess up, just correct me, just catch me. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm Clay Jackson, president of the Greater Grand Rapids branch of the NAACP, that's CLE, JACKSON. First of all, we know that this day has been, the community, the leadership in this community has been awaiting this for a long time.
we feel a long time because of the atrocity in which we all witnessed this crime happening. So I want to thank, first of all, Commissioner Robert Womack and his team who's standing here with us for his testicular fortitude to highlight this on a national level in the NAACP National Office and our Michigan State Conference President, President Yvonne White. Also, I want to thank Kent County Prosecutor Chris Becker. We had asked, we were very public with that, for him to recuse himself because we had some legitimate concerns. And I'm just thankful that his opinion today, we feel, is appropriate. And so I want to thank him for his due diligence in his strategy in making sure that this case was looked at appropriately and effectively. But more importantly, I want to thank the Lyoya family for their patience in their time of grief in this horrific situation. And so one of the things that I want to make loud and clear is that we stand in solidarity with Patrick's family in asking for peaceful demonstrations and protests. That's what the family has asked for since the very beginning of this. And we stand still in solidarity with them, because one of the things I will say is that I always tell people we will never win the war on the streets. So we have to break systemic systems down and institutions down from a policy level. And so I want to send that out to all of the protesters. We will never win the war on the street. It's fine to protest, but it has to be peaceful, it has to be strategic. And at the end of the day, we have to make systemic changes. We have here today with us Elisa Nehemiah, also Honesty Hodges' grandmother, and I want to thank her for joining us. You all are very familiar with Honesty's case, and that's an ongoing case, and we're still supporting the family with respect to this systemic harassment and brutality from the Grand Rapids Police Department. So we are happy with the decision to indict Officer Christopher Schurr for the unjustified murder of Patrick Lyoya. There have been too many incidents where Black and brown lives have been lost at the hands of law enforcement, whose #1 priority should be to protect and serve all citizens. Although this is a step in the right direction, we hope that all involved in this next phase will be unbiased, and ultimately Officer Christopher Schurr will be convicted for his heinous actions. We will continue to work with our local elected officials and city leadership to ensure the proper reforms are put in place and effectively implemented to prevent more tragedies like this from happening or taking place. This has been a historical, in terms of GRPD, and not just GRPD, I think law enforcement agencies across the country, of harassment and over-policing of Black and brown residents in cities across this country. We will also continue to work with our U.S. Senate and U.S. House of Representatives to demand that they pass the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. I also want to acknowledge our Youth Council President, President Javon Fields, for standing up here with us, and all of our youth activists has been on the ground, and that has been digitally making sure that this story stays alive. One of the last things, and then we can open it up for questions, that I will mention is that as a result of this, and we have been working on this for a number of years, in terms of what can we do from a technological perspective right? Because as we know, the video, none of us could see the video because the video was confiscated with respect to witnesses and body cams and all of that stuff. And so it took a while for us to see the video. So we have been thinking about, from a technology perspective, what can we do to address that? So I want to say today that we will be launching a technological tool that will help individuals address a number of rights, not just from law enforcement, but a number of rights across the board. It will be essentially a hub of sorts, an online hub that will track all of these injustices and help with the integrity of evidence, because it's a record. It's a record. So I'll open it up for questions.
How confident are you that they will be able to get a guilty verdict here if this case is held here in Kent County? Because we just asked the prosecutor, is he thinking about moving this case? And he said, no, it's going to stay right here in Kent County.
Well, that's one of the things. That's an excellent question. That's one of our concerns. And we'll be looking into that in terms of, can we get this case moved to a different venue? I actually think it probably should be. But I also think there has been a historical issue with a fair and representative jury of your peers. So that's going to be very critical in this case. And so we will be researching that and trying to understand what needs to happen from that perspective. Because as I said earlier, it's about conviction, right? So the charges have been made, but it's about conviction.
And these charges, what message does that send to the black community to see that an officer, a white officer that shot an unarmed black man is charged with second-degree murder? What message does that send to the black community?
It sends a loud message. It sends I mean, let's be honest. We, historically, we hosted, and Honesty's grandmother was here at the hearings that we hosted with the Michigan Department of Civil Rights, I believe in 2019, where we had almost 900 folks come out over a 9-hour period and talk about in-depthly the injustices that have been measured on community by the Grand Rapids Police Department. So we know that, right? So we know that. So I think this is a step in the right direction. And again, I applaud Chris Becker, the Kent County Prosecutor, for bringing charges, because I think that many of us were not confident that this would happen, even though when we looked at it from a legality perspective, we still were not confident that it actually happened, that it would happen, these charges, but we're glad. So it's a step in the right direction. Again, I just want to, again, echo my comments with respect to Chris Becker and him having the fortitude to bring these charges.
So again, to follow up on that, what was your initial gut reaction to that second-degree charge being filed?
I was shocked, to be quite honest. I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked, because I actually didn't expect that. I mean, just being in full transparency, I did not expect that. I did not. I knew it should happen, but I did not expect it for a number of reasons that I won't get into, in terms of relationship between the prosecutor's office, Grand Rapids Police, and the city leadership, and a number of other things. So I really, but again, we're thankful for Chris having that fortitude to bring the charges that we feel comfortable with. And so now we'll have to continue to fight in the courts.
Do you plan on still talking with Becker? Because I remember that day when you did a press conference outside his office asking him to recuse himself, to step aside from this case. Are you going to still talk with him?
Absolutely. Chris and I have a great relationship. We've worked on a number of things, and we partner on a number of initiatives. And I think on a number of things we see eye to eye. And so, of course, I'm going to talk to him. I'm going to talk to him about his decision, and in full disclosure, I have not contacted him because today has been busy. But moving forward, we absolutely will be talking with him.
Did you? Because I know he had said he had spoken to people outside of his office on what they should do. After that day of that press conference outside his office, did you talk to him again?
I did not. I did not. Actually, I did not. We did not. We did not have any further conversation, because at the end of the day, there was nothing else to talk about, really. So I respect Chris. I respect his his legal acumen. And so we had the conversation a couple times about him recusing himself. And he made it very clear to us that he was not going to do that. And so we allowed, and we were very patient with the process, and we're here today with this decision.
Do you feel there should have been additional charges? In the prosecutor's press conference, he said that he couldn't bring a felony firearm charge, citing a previous Michigan Supreme Court case that prevented him from doing so.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, our legal counsel actually is not here. He's stuck in traffic coming from Chicago. So I'm not going to get into the additional charges, but that's something that we will be, I'm sure in the coming days, we'll be having a conversation with Mr. Becker about as well.
You said you were shocked about the charges. Aside from that initial reaction, do you feel like second-degree murder brings justice to this case?
I think it does from a legality perspective, because I knew that we couldn't do first degree. And so I think second degree is a good place. It is. I think it is. It's not manslaughter. So I think we looked at all of the legal elements in terms of first, second, third, manslaughter, and all of those things. So I think second degree, that's why I said I was shocked. Because there's precedence also, and most of you probably know, at the U.S. Supreme Court level, that speaks to a clear and present danger. And so that was one of the things that we were looking at as well, in that his opinion could actually be based on that Supreme Court law. But again, I think we are happy. We're pleased with Mr. Becker's decision or his opinion. And again, I just want to say this. Now the fight really begins, because it's a fight in the courts. It's a fight in the courts. And so we will be fighting in the court system to hopefully ensure that there is ultimately a conviction. That's what it is. That's what President Obama said when he looked at policing and reformation across the country. One of the areas that he identified that totally needs to be reformed is the court system. So that's where our fight is now. And we're going to, again, stand by the family and stand by all of these families. You know, Honesty's, Hodges family is still fighting for justice over an alleged mistaken identity of Honesty, 11-year-old, I believe at the time, for a 40-year-old white female. So one of the things that we will be doing as we move forward, our next step will be, and we already have drafted, our legal counsel has drafted the letter. We'll be sending that off tomorrow to Kristen Clark and Vanita Gupta at the U.S. Department of Justice, asking for a full pattern and practice investigation into the Grand Rapids Police Department. And so that's what we will be doing. We have met with U.S. Representative Brenda Lawrence with respect to that. We met with the U.S. Attorney for the Western District, Attorney Todd, with respect to that. We met with the Dana Nessel. And so that's what one of our next steps will be.
Speaking about next step, I know you said you stand firm with the family on peaceful protest. There is a planned protest in front of GRPD tonight. Do any of you plan on being out there tonight as well?
I'm sure. I mean, you know, we represent 60,000 plus members in Kent County. So I'm sure there will be NAACP members out there.
Do you plan on being out there?
I don't plan on being out there because we got a number of other issues that we need to, next steps that we need to address immediately. We are planning a meeting, I believe, on Monday with City Manager Washington, Chief Winstrom, and the Office of Public Oversight and Accountability to talk about the policy violations also that no one's talking about.
And what message does this send to the police department to see these charges come against the GRP?
I don't, you know, that's a great question. I can't recall if this has ever happened. Can anybody? I can't recall. And so I think this sends a strong message. It does. I hope that it sends a strong message that ultimately your job is to protect and serve. And let me be clear on this point as well. When I talked about this, it's a rights act. One of the things that we fully understand is that goes both ways. So as civilians, we have to respect law enforcement and their rights. And law enforcement has to respect the rights of civilians. It goes both ways. Because at the end of the day, we're all trying to go home. That's it. So I think it will send a loud message. I think it has sent, and we'll see. Like I said right now, and I'll speak to the protesters and all of us who are protesting. Our fight is in the courts now.
Do you expect the officer to be fired today?
I thought he was fired today, and I thought that he had been transported to the King County Jail, is my understanding.
No more questions.
All right. Thank you, guys.
And you have been listening to Clee Jackson, the president of the NAACP Grand Rapids chapter. You heard him say that they were happy with Kent County Prosecutor Chris Becker's charges. They feel that they were appropriate. You may remember that they held a press conference asking Becker to recuse himself from the case. So the fact that they are coming out and saying that they are very happy with the charges that he came down with, in fact, they said they were shocked when they heard them, certainly gives us a step forward in where we're going and healing as a community, that we maybe be coming together. And now we're looking forward, of course, to the trial.
Yeah, he said it was a strong message and that they're very pleased with today's announcement. So we want to check in now with a teacher at Cooley Law School's Homeland Security Program. Andy Arena is also an FBI agent in charge of the Detroit Division and serves on the Detroit Crime Commission. And Andy, we understand you have an in-depth understanding of Michigan's criminal law as it comes to officer-involved shootings. So what was your reaction to the prosecutor's decision?
I was not surprised. I certainly expected that. I think the elements of what occurred there could have been second degree, could have been voluntary manslaughter. So I was certainly not surprised by the charge we see today.
Do you think there's a chance, or do you think this will go to trial, or is there a chance that perhaps there could be a different outcome, perhaps an agreement to a lesser charge?
Well, I think a plea agreement to manslaughter is, in most cases, would be possible. I don't know in this situation it would be allowed. I think the public outcry would be too great. So I think you will see this go to trial.
Well, Andy, you mentioned public outcry. How difficult do you think, what kind of challenge is it going to be to find jurors who have never heard anything about this case?
You're probably not. I think when we talk about a fair trial is not a perfect trial. You're just going to have to find jurors that are open-minded and will not allow their biases to interfere in their deliberations.
All right, Andy Arena, professor at Cooley Law School, thank you so much for your time and your information this afternoon. Stay with us. Oh, thank you so much again. We want to let you know that we are going to be breaking you back to your regular programming. Stay with us at 5 o'clock with team coverage of today's events.
This has been a breaking news report from 13 on Your Side.